Welcome back to Create Your Best Chapter. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy to be here. I am really loving bringing amazing women together to have these really insightful conversations where we talk about job loss, divorce, major life changes in midlife. And I'm also gathering so much wisdom and insight and guidance from these amazing women. And I'm so excited to be sharing their stories with you because something that I know for sure is that when women come together to support each other and to encourage each other and to be vulnerable in sharing their stories and experiences, so many wonderful, powerful things happen. And today, my guest is a powerhouse. She's this really amazing lady that I met just over a year ago at YYC Fempreneur event, networking event. We happened to sit by each other, which is how the universe works. It's how we get connected. And I know that we were both a little bit shy and awkward to be somewhere that we didn't know each other, and we happened to sit by each other, and we just totally hit it off. So I'm so excited to have Melissa Lyle on the show today. Melissa, I'm going to turn over to you. If you can just quickly introduce yourself, let everyone know what it is that you do.
Sure. It's funny you say that. That's the one piece of like the introduction that I am the worst at. And I sat with a coach this week and I gave him I'm Melissa Lyle. I've been in recruitment for Lala. And he's like, oh my gosh, that's so not you. So Melissa Lyle. My new tagline is I'm a unicorn hunter. And I work with organizations to help them fill gaps within the company and within their teams with rockstar candidates.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that. I'm really glad that you're working with a coach. I'm glad that you're reworking how you're introducing yourself. And maybe I need to change my intro question because I know that that can be a little bit of an intimidating question. But hey, you get a chance to practice what it is that
Yeah.
you do, and I love that.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard when you don't come from that sales background to dive right into, here's what I do. And I'm super like what you see is what you get with me, right? And so to then have to flip that to, oh, I'm in recruitment. I've been here for 13 years. It just like he said to me, that's boring and you're not boring. So we need to work on that. So yeah.
You're definitely not boring, Melissa. You're like the opposite of boring. And the cool thing about having your own business is that you can be super creative. And I think in today's world, we need to be standing out. And I know we're going to talk about this in a couple of minutes, but in today's world, we need to be standing out and we need to be our own unique selves and we need to be embracing what makes us different and unique because that's actually what people are attracted to and what people want. So
100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
So before we dive into, what it is that people are looking for in terms of, because I know you work with a lot of people that are looking for work, you work with a lot of people that have lost their jobs and are going through this identity shift or this identity questioning. Let's talk a little bit about relationships. And if you could share your story of being in a relationship, a long-term committed relationship, and it falling apart. How was that journey for you? And what did you learn or what insights would you like to share?
God, yeah. Well, it was like 15 years ago now ish. It was I like at the time it was super traumatic. Um, it was a 15-year on again, off again relationship. And at the end, I was all in. I like, we're okay, we're doing this. And then the rug got pulled out from underneath me. Like completely gobsmacked was, yeah. And so I'm kind of a survivor. Like I've had what people could say is like a bit of a shit show, gong show upbringing, right? Like child of multiple divorces and, kind of like here's somebody in your life and then they're gone. And so when when all of that happens and when my relationship ended, I was like, okay, let's go. And I had a bit of a pity party for myself for a bit. But then I just started filling my days with things that were good for me and started really taking care of me again. Like I was going to the gym in the morning and I would go to the gym at night. And then on Fridays I would go and I would pick up a frozen pizza and a bottle of wine and sit on my couch and watch What Not to Wear marathons while I ate a whole pizza and drank a bottle of wine. Not necessarily the best thing, for you as a like from a health perspective, but it was one of the coping mechanisms. The other one was really like just going to the gym and really kind of taking care of my body, which I hadn't been doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds actually really familiar. The frozen pizza on a Friday night, feeling a little bit sorry for yourself.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And then how did you slowly start to get out of that? Because obviously you're not doing that anymore. So
Yeah.
how did you start to, build up your life again and really keep doing what was best for you?
Well, it's a hard thing. Like it's a hard balance. And like, to be honest, that's where I'm struggling right now. I made a post the other day about, oh my God, like what is everybody else doing? Cause I need some help here. It's hard. It's hard when you have a family, and it's hard to put, as a female, it's hard. I find we seem to struggle with it more. And the women that don't, I'm like, whoa, like I'm so in awe. But it really does boil down to where's your time best spent. And I can preach it all day, but really doing those things is the difficult piece. Yeah, I don't, there's no magic elixir, and I definitely don't have the answer.
Yeah, it is challenging. And I do agree with you that as women, we tend to find it really difficult to look after ourselves or
Yeah.
use this term that we use a lot of self-care. It's almost become this like this indulgent term. Like, oh, self-care, it means a massage, or it means just going to the spa and just having this like luxurious experience, which obviously is amazing. And
Yeah.
if you can do it, I think that it's super beneficial to include that into your part of your routine, anyways, maybe not weekly, but definitely on a regular basis. But self care to me is more about what can you do every day that's really supporting your energy,
Yeah.
right? Supporting your physical, emotional, mental, spiritual well being. And I don't think it has to take a really long time. Like, I know that post that you're referring to, and you got so many different ideas, but a lot of people were saying, a lot of women were saying, I go for a walk,
Yeah.
I have a bath, I sit and just breathe for a couple of minutes. Like, it's not earth shattering things. It's just, let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And really and honestly, for me, it started to probably August, I think. I started going for a walk every day. And I started with like 3 kilometers. Where we live, it's about 1.5 kilometers up the hill and back. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start there. And it got to the point where I would be gone for like an hour, hour and a half. And I would do it first thing in the morning because it was daylight. And like I just started feeling so much better. And it is simple. And it was interesting. I was just reading a comment on that post yesterday about somebody else who was saying the thing about walking. And I'm like, well, maybe I need to create a walking group. And then I was like, oh my God, yeah, one more thing to add to my plate.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes when you have that accountability person, it just changes, and you then are more dedicated. Well, I'm then more dedicated to it.
That's not unique, Melissa. I mean, I think we all need accountability partners or some sort of strategy to stay accountable because discipline's hard, right? And some people find it easier to do certain things than others, right? So you might find it easier to do something different, eat properly, and other people might have a challenge with that, for as an example, right? But we
Yeah.
all need some sort of accountability. And a couple of things. I mean, first of all, yes, start small. Like start where you can. Like if you can walk for 10 minutes, walk for 10 minutes. If it's
Yeah,
around the block, it's around the block. If it's
exactly.
3 kilometers, and then you can start adding to it, right? But I think a lot of times we think, and I hear this from my clients a lot, like, well, I have to overhaul my whole entire life. And then guess what? That's overwhelming in itself. And then we just don't do anything. We just stay stuck versus saying, I'm just going to do the smallest possible thing that I can today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's true. You know, we went for a walk the other night and it ended up being 20 minutes and it was just a quick loop. And, you know, like the hyper overachiever in me was like, well, 20 minutes, like that's, but it was something,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. And something is better than nothing.
100%. And we need to celebrate those because some days that's all you have. Some days it's like, what can I do? And maybe it is only 20 minutes. Maybe it's only 5 minutes, right? But at least you did something. And then the next day, it's a different day. So it's almost like treating every day as hey, it's a new day. Gauging how do I feel today? What's my energy level like? How am I feeling? Where am I in my cycle? Like all these things.
Mhm.
What kind of schedule do I have today? But honoring ourselves to do something to look after ourselves because otherwise guess what happens, we're just stuck in front of the computer. And
Yeah.
hey, I know I'm a business owner too, right? I could just be working all day long in front of my computer or on my phone, which we know is so detrimental for so many different reasons.
Oh,
So just getting out of that even for a
yeah.
few minutes is so helpful.
Yeah. It's so, and it's so easy to get sucked into it.
Yeah,
You
it is.
know, like for me, when I'm done here in my office, I go out and I just want to kind of chill. And so I plunk myself on the couch and always have my phone, like my phone is always there. And so I need to just start creating that habit of maybe that's not what I do. Maybe I go outside and walk around the block, right? And not just from the
Mhm,
day.
mhm.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of it, it's little things, but it's sometimes it's hard to fit those little things in.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. But it's just about being committed and understanding why. Like if we know that for sure it's gonna make us feel better, then I think sometimes that gets me out of for me anyways, it gets me out of that stuck
Yeah.
feeling like, "Oh, I don't wanna do this," or "I'm too tired," or all these excuses that we tell ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's too dark. It's, "Oh, it's snow today. I can't do anything," right? Like,
Yeah.
please, we all have the clothing. We can all do something. We can do something inside too, right? We just like to give ourselves excuses.
Yeah.
But it's remembering, like for me, I always remember, hey, Vera, like you're gonna feel so much better, even if you just go out for a few minutes. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I know that I will. And you always 100% do.
Well, and I find if you can do the mind shift from I have
Mm,
to I get to,
mm,
right? Because there's lots of people who don't have that ability.
mm,
So it's like okay, I get to go outside, and yeah,
mm,
it's snowy, and there was 4 or 5 inches of snow that happened overnight, but there's people that have never experienced snow, so I
mm.
get to go out there and experience it, and it's not -40, and it's here for till the weekend, and knowing Calgary next week will be 10 above,
Mhm, mhm. That's such
right?
a great mind shift and such an important and it gave me goosebumps when you said that because it also just reminded me of what I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
And when you're grateful for something, you can't stay stuck. You can't stay, miserable, right? So it's
No.
remembering that so important. Thank
it
you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, gratitude's super powerful. I mean, we were talking before we hopped on about, the that happens as a business owner, but also like I feel gratitude that I have the ability to do this, and I'm not in a position where I'm going into work every day going, "Oh my god, I hate this
Mhm.
place." Right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, there's stuff that happens as business owners that's a bit of a gong show. Um, but
You
you
get to
know,
help people every day, and I wanna talk about that because
hmm,
there's so many people right now that are getting laid off, that are not loving what they're doing for a lot of different reasons.
yeah,
And as a person who's a unicorn hunter, who looks for candidates, right?
Yeah.
Who matches really amazing candidates with really amazing employers. What do you see is the number one challenge for people who are looking, or even employers who are looking? Like, what do you see as a challenge out there right now?
I think one of the big ones um, is really looking at how you fit within an organization and how you communicate that to an organization. So, you know, especially if you're in a place of, oh my God, I've been laid off and I wasn't expecting this,
Mhm.
it then creates a sense of panic and I need to get out there and I need to start, sort of shotgunning my resume everywhere,
Mhm.
which is probably one of the worst things you could do.
Mhm.
And it's easy to say, hey, you've been laid off, take some time, for you, take some time to think about, okay, I got laid off from that job, I was happy or I wasn't happy, what are the things that I really enjoyed about that job, and then start thinking about building your next position based on those.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, so like give yourself time to breathe if you can,
Mhm. Mhm.
and really, I always say to people, you have to do your due diligence with an organization, because it's so important that your core values align with a company's core values.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I see that a lot, and as well, that there's a disconnect there. And a lot of times people don't even really know what their values are, or they haven't really thought about that for a long time. And they're wondering, well, why am I not even happy? Or why wasn't I happy in this position?
Mhm.
And most of the time, there's some sort of misalignment of
Yeah.
values. And it doesn't mean that every single value has to be exactly matched, but there definitely has to be some consistency or alignment, right?
Yeah. 100%. Because if you're not aligned with a company's values, like how can you do your best work and how can you be happy?
Mhm.
So I think that's a huge one.
What about the whole, like, there's so much competition right now, it feels like anyways. I know that there's been a lot of mass layoffs. There feels like there's a
Yeah.
lot of people looking. I know there's a lot of people looking, which can be daunting, I think, for a lot of people. And it can feel a bit like, am I gonna find something? Because there's so many people that, and I can imagine, and I sense this from my clients too, sometimes this imposter syndrome or this comparison, like, well, so and so is better qualified than me, right? There's other people that have more education or better experience. So they kind of feel like a little bit discouraged. Like, what do you say to people that are in that state of mind?
So, and I will, the majority of those people are women,
Mhm.
because, and I'm assuming women tend to have more of the thought that I don't meet like 90 to 100% of what this is, so I'm not going to bother.
Mm.
Um, I think if you've had similar experiences and there's certain things on a posting that don't necessarily meet what you have, I think you really need to think about how big of a deal is that? On the list of things, where does that rank? And when it comes to education, how many years of experience do you have doing this thing? And the fact that you don't have a degree or your degree isn't specifically there, does that really matter when you've got 5, 10 years of experience or more?
Mhm.
Right? Because that degree, if you've taken it 10 years ago, was great and it gave you the foundation. But I'll guarantee you, if you've been working for 10 years, your hands on day to day is way more valuable.
Mhm.
Now, if you're a doctor,
Mhm.
if you're a lawyer, right? If you're an engineer, maybe not. But I think when we look at like there's a lot of administrative positions that are asking for a 4-year degree. What? Like for what purpose? Or an entry level position, and and they're asking for a degree. I don't understand it when it comes to certain positions.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it comes down to how well aligned does your background work with that particular position that you're looking at.
Mhm.
And if you can see it, then it's up to you to then take your resume and relay that information.
Mhm.
Did that answer that
Yeah,
question?
I'm hearing 2 things. I mean, I'm hearing 2 things. One, I'm hearing is taking the emotion out of it, right?
Yeah.
So, first of all, I agree with you, taking a little bit of time to regroup. I work with a lot of people who have lost their jobs, and the first thing is I need to get my resume done, I need to update my LinkedIn profile, I need to start applying for jobs, and it's this, like, almost panicky, like, action-oriented
Yeah.
feeling, which, yes, we need to do those things. We need to create a new resume. We need to be on LinkedIn. We need to start networking. But if you're doing it from this kind of frenzied, panic, desperate energy,
Yeah.
it's certainly not going to serve you. And
Yeah.
so I'm always like, whoa, like, let's just slow down a tiny bit. I get that we need money. I get that we need to pay the bills. I get that there's financial strain and stress.
Yeah.
But it's going to be worse if you're just, like you said, just throwing a bunch of resumes at the wall and hoping something's going to stick, because chances are it won't stick. So it's taking that emotion out, which really means that you need to get out of overwhelm. You need to, like, regulate your emotions. You need to kind of, like, figure out, okay, how can I process some of this, whatever feelings you're feeling? Like, people are feeling lots of different things after getting laid off, which are totally perfectly normal and healthy. But we also need to process it out of our body. So I'm hearing from you, like, take the emotion out of when you're looking at the job posting or the job description and at your resume, and really look at it like you would be looking at a friend's or someone else's, right? Being a bit more objective, like, what are the actual skills and expertise that I have, and what are the actual core things that the company's looking for that are the most important. Now, we don't always know. If there's a list of 20 things that the company's looking for, we don't know. Look, first of all, no one's going to have all 20. I agree with you. So, you know, some things, yes, are probably a must, but we don't often know, like, what are those musts. And so I agree with you, like, really taking that time to look at what it is that you do and how that aligns with the company, and applying regardless of whether you have every single thing on there.
Yeah, and to that point, I would say there is no way to know what the priorities are. However, I usually say if you've got like their top 10, if they've got 10 or more bullets and you've got the majority of those are probably their top priorities.
Mhm,
So go ahead and apply.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
How can people stand out in a resume? Because I know now we have all these applicant tracking systems and AI, and it's, you can't, back in the day we used to create this really beautiful looking resume and you wanted to put some of your personality in there. And I mean, I'm looking at you, Melissa, like, you have this beautiful hair and you always dress so beautifully, and it's, you know right away by looking at you, you can tell your personality, right? Like, it stands out. And how do we stand out in today's world of this AI and job search and competition?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough. In my opinion, gone are the days of a one size fits all with your resume. You have to modify it and adapt it for each different position because no two positions are the same.
Mhm.
The other thing, especially in the Calgary market, in order to get your face out there and be known, is you have to network.
Mhm.
Like it's so important.
Mhm.
And I mean, maybe it's just networking with the people that you know already. Maybe it's networking and going out and joining new people, which is daunting. And trust me, like 100%, I get it. If I walk into a room and I don't know anybody, I'm like, like,
Mhm.
somebody help, come help,
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the standing out piece, it is difficult.
Mhm.
And people are always like, well, I do that in my cover letter. Great. If they've asked you for a cover letter, if they haven't
Right.
asked you for a cover letter, I would say you should spend an hour and a half to 2 hours crafting like a damn good cover letter.
Mhm.
But if they haven't asked for it, that's not a good use of your time
Mhm. Mhm.
because likelihood of them reading it is slim. You know, um, I hear people say all the time, "Oh, I saw this job on Indeed or on LinkedIn, and X many of hundreds and sometimes thousands of applicants." Well, just because you've written a cover letter doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to make you stand out.
Mhm.
And on the other end of it, if I'm a hiring manager, I don't have time to go through it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it is hard. It is really about making sure that you meet their criteria
Mhm.
and really honing in on what are those top priorities for them and speaking their language.
Mhm. Is that what companies look for? Like, you also obviously work for companies too. So what are they saying in terms of what they're looking for? What makes a candidate stand out for them? Like, what makes a rock star candidate for them?
I mean, it varies from company to company, right? The big thing is cultural fit. You could have somebody who is the most qualified, but if they come into an organization and they're not going to fit, then they don't get hired. And that's a hard one for a lot of people to understand
Mhm.
because, well, I'm so qualified and I have all of this experience. Yeah, but from a cultural perspective, you didn't fit, right? And it's one of those soft areas. Like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean I didn't fit? Well, you might be a super A-type personality and going in with a bunch of people that are much more sort of laid back, quiet, calm. That's going to create friction in that workplace.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I always tell candidates and people that are looking for work that it's really important to make sure that you remember an interview is a two-way street.
Mhm.
Don't forget to interview that organization. Don't forget to do your homework on that organization.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I would imagine networking helps with that because if you can connect even with someone who's working at that organization and maybe they're not the hiring people or making decisions, but if you can get a sense of what that culture is, because yeah, that's a pretty loose term and people define it differently. And what does that actually mean? But if you can ask some questions around that, like, is it like, can people walk in at 8:30 or are they expected there at 7:30 on the dot, or do people go out for lunch? Like, there's questions you can ask to figure out what that culture is like, just for you to get a sense of that. And maybe sometimes you have to say, okay, actually, I'm not going to pursue this opportunity because it's just
Yeah.
not going to be a good fit for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's websites like Glassdoor that rank, employers and how good they are. Do your research because sometimes those rankings are from people like disgruntled employees. So you have to be able to read between the lines. And yeah, being able to connect with somebody who's actually there or somebody who has been there and can maybe talk to it from an actual genuine place rather than I'm pissed off and like,
Mhm.
I had a shitty manager, but really was that manager not so great or were you just not a good fit for that team?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There's so
I
many
mean,
factors.
there's a lot of factors, and I think really the biggest thing is that things have changed so much. Even in the last 5 years, things have changed and
Yeah.
shifted so much from expectations of employees, employers, how we do things, how we stand out. So really, I think it's about tapping into your network, doing, spending the time and energy on your resume. And I know that, I mean, that's not everyone's, it's most people's least favorite thing to do, but
Oh, 100%.
really, it's like one of the only ways to get in front of people other than networking and meeting people. So getting out of your comfort zone, I think a little bit too,
Yeah,
right? It's like, okay, how
100%.
how can I get out of my comfort zone? How can I do something different? Like if you've been sending out 30, 40, 50, 60 resumes and have received nothing, something needs to change. Like something's just not working there. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that you're a failure, that you're
No.
not qualified. It just means like maybe it needs to be a little tweak. And I've noticed, Melissa, that you're now offering resume coaching services. So tell us a little bit about that, because I think that would be so valuable for people.
Yeah, I mean, and that comes from my perspective of you have to change your resume every time you send it out, right? So for years I've said to people, like almost since a year into doing recruitment, don't pay somebody to write your resume. Because what happened is I was working with somebody who had paid, I think, $500 to have somebody rewrite their resume. They could not afford the $500. And I was going through their resume with them and I said, well, what does this mean? And they had to look at it and they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, oh my God, like your resume is your selling tool. If you can't speak to it, yikes. So my take on it is let's sit down and let's spend some time going through how to build a resume that's going to get you noticed. And then I've given you the tools so that when we're done, you can take those and you can go and apply for all those jobs. And, then every once in a while, if you need to come back and have a conversation, then we have that conversation. But I've taught you how to fish. I've not just fed you the fish, right?
Yeah.
So you can take care of yourself and should be able to then create those resumes on your own.
I love that, because it's really about taking control of your job search, right? I mean, I think that there's value in having people help you with, write your resume if that's what you want, but there really needs to be that knowledge of, okay, how do I craft this for myself as well moving forward, right? So you can't outsource that to people. You can't outsource finding a job. You can't outsource promoting yourself. You can't outsource networking with people. Like I wish we could. I wish there was an easier method, but it really is about, okay, what can I do to take control of this? What can I do to regulate my emotions, take control of what I'm feeling, deal with any negativity? Like if someone's feeling bitter or resentful or angry, those are normal emotions, but let's deal with that. Let's not have that be a hangover into the rest of our job search and have that come out in an energetic way. Right. So it's taking control of that, taking control of the journey and having some ownership over that, which I know is challenging, because I think for a lot of people, they're so used to, I was just able to get a job quite easily 10 years ago or 6 years ago. And now that's not the case. And all of a sudden the people that are landing the job seem to be the ones that are doing something a little bit different and being very intentional about how they're doing it.
Very intentional. Yeah.
So anyways, I'm going to obviously put all of your contact information in the show notes so people can get a hold of you. I know you're a lot on LinkedIn, and your company is called Hire Talent Recruitment. The website is hiretalentrecruitment.com. So connect.
It's a work in progress at the moment.
It is a work in progress, but connect with Melissa on LinkedIn, because she's super active on LinkedIn. She's also putting a lot of links as to networking events that are coming up every week, especially here in Calgary. So if you're in Calgary, follow Melissa so that you get a sense of where you can go network and meet some new people. Just connect with her. She'd be happy to get to know you and connect with you. So this has been amazing, Melissa. I think we need to do a part 2 at some point in time as well, because there's just lots to talk about.
Oh, so much. Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk about how and why you started your own business. That's a whole other topic and a whole other conversation, but I think that'd be super fascinating.
That it is.
Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to talk to you. And you've given our listeners so many amazing insights and tips. And I wish everyone out there that's looking for work a really speedy job search, and be really intentional, do your homework, figure out what it is that you want, figure out what it is that lights you up, and the right job will come along. I know it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.